Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a spicy core breaker in the Open Grade League, Palossand. Palossand is a ground and ghost type Pokemon with the moveset of Mud Shot, Scorching Sands, and Shadow Ball, and due to its unique coverage, it does very well into some of the more toxic Pokemon in the Open Grade League, like MEDICHAM, Bastiodon, and CARBINK. Palossand definitely on the spicier side of things, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a Pokemon to use for gaining Elo, although I did have some very nice sets with it, going 8-3 in my battles. So without further ado, let's up into the matches, and let's go Palossand. Hopping into the first match, picking up a great lead Palossand into Medicham. Opponent save switches into Lickitung. I'm going to stay in with the Palossand and go for the Scorching Sands. This way, I either get some very nice chip damage or an early shield. Opponent lets the Lickitung go, and now I can send in Toxapex. They have a ton of energy on the Lickitung, but it's not going to go very far going up against the bulky Toxapex. We have the absolute battle of the bulk. I could potentially look to go for a Sludge Wave KO, but instead, I would rather actually get myself a bit lower, go for a Brine and a Farm Down. This way, I can leave with a ton of loaded energy to threaten whatever my opponent decides to send in. So I'm going to go for the Brine here. Brine is a pretty mediocre move, so it's not going to do a whole lot to the Lickitung, but that actually works out here, as I get a massive Farm Down, leaving with over a Sludge Wave, and now back in comes the Medicham. Sludge Wave will hit for some solid damage onto the Medicham. Medicham looking like they might try and go for the counter down, but Toxapex will not be denied, able to make it to another Sludge Wave, and that grabs a shield from my opponent. They have a lot of energy here, so I decided to send in the Ninetales, because this way they're forced to go for their more expensive move of Psychic. I decide to shield the first. They do go for the Psychic. In the back, it's Bastiodon, and they're absolutely core broken by the Sandcastle. Let's go, Palossand. Scorching Sands, double super effective damage onto the Bastiodon, and we can comfortably take a Flamethrower here, so I can let this through. Opponent goes for the Stone Edge, unfamiliar with the typing of Palossand. And now I can just farm up to the back-to-back Scorching Sands, and this game is absolutely over. I can go for the Scorching Sands here to get the KO. I have a Scorching Sands for the Medi, and I'm very close to a Weather Ball as well. Opponent realizes that it's over, and they let the Medicham get KO'd by the Scorching Sands. Moving into the next match, we see a Dream Lead, Palossand into CARBINK. Opponent save switches into Superior, and I'm going to respond with Toxapex. My guess is this is probably going to be either a Medi as the third or a second Grass type. It feels like they're trying to bait out a Flyer, but of course my team doesn't have any Flyers on it, although I do have some pretty solid checks to Grass in the back. I'm able to land that Sludge Wave, and down goes Superior. If the CARBINK goes for a full Farm Down here, I believe I should be able to make a Brine plus a Sludge Wave. Sludge Wave does slightly more damage, I believe, just because Brine, even though it's super effective, is a really bad move. So I'm going to go for the Sludge Wave, and then just commit to the Brine. My opponent can throw energy if they want to deny that move, and that's exactly what they're going to do. They're able to get the KO, but I can send in Palossand. In the back, it's Venusaur, and I get to send in the Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales. Ninetales does have the pacing advantage in this matchup, and I did switch fairly quickly, so as long as they aren't too far ahead on energy, I should be in a commanding position to win this game. I'm farming up with the Ninetales here. My opponent makes it to another charge move, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to commit the shield, and now I'm just going to fire off the Weather Ball. I have energy on the Ninetales. I still have the Palossand, which is going to do, of course, very well into the CARBINK, but as you're going to see, I almost throw this game. I'm looking to bank a Dazzling Gleam and switch out, but I can't, and suddenly, I'm like, did I just throw this? Please tell me I didn't just throw this. Oh my goodness. They go for the Moonblast, and I'm like, the good news is, it takes a while to get to Moonblast on CARBINK. I'm farming up and firing off the Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands will be shielded. I get the attack debuff. Is this the Moonblast or is it the Rock Slide? It's only the Rock Slide. Palossand able to make the Scorching Sands. All I had to do was just throw the move on the A9 and it was a very easy win. But we almost throw the game, but we still get the win. We see a negative lead in the next match. Palossand into Altaria. I'm going to save switch into Toxapex, and my opponent is going to respond with a Lickitung. The goal of the Toxapex save switch is going to be to check for any Steel types that are lurking in the back to hopefully free up the Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales to do well as the closer. But instead of a Steel type, we are met with a Lickitung. And unfortunately there, my tabs don't register and I miss a bunch of poison jabs. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. That is extremely unfortunate. So now they've not only shielded a Sludge Wave, but I'm in a bit of an awkward spot here where I missed some damage. I'm firing off the Sludge Wave. Sludge Wave is going to connect. And now the question is, can I make a play for switch advantage? I'm going to commit the shield. If I get switch advantage, I should hopefully be in a really good spot here, but they have another body slam. You know what? I'm selling out for switch. I am double shielding, and I'm going for the brine. Brine will get the KO unless they give up the final shield. Opponent is going to let that go in the back. It's a MEDICHAM, and this is exactly what I needed, as now I can put MEDICHAM onto the Palossand, and I have the Alolan Ninetales to shut down the Altaria. I can send in the Palossand. They're going to be firing off an Ice Punch here. Ice Punch does hit for super effective damage. Oh, they don't have Ice Punch. They have Power Up Punch and Psychic. I build up to the Shadow Ball, and I'm firing off the Scorching Sands on the CMP tie. Scorching Sands will be shielded by the opponent, and they're going for a boosted Psychic. Psychic will connect. I'm able to tank that, no problem. I'm farming up, and I go for the Shadow Ball just in case they catch onto the Altaria. Shadow Ball will get the KO. In comes Altaria. I send in the A9, and the opponent resigns the match. We see a very tough lead in the next match. Palossand into Shadow Venusaur. I'm going to save switch into Toxapex. Venusaur is going to bank a Frenzy Plant and then send in Bastiodon. And this match is off to a terrible start. Bastiodon, I did need to bait out. This would absolutely crush the Alolan Ninetales, but my opponent so far has played it extremely well. They recognized that they had a very dominant matchup they could switch into, and they banked a Frenzy Plant, and Frenzy Plant is pretty deadly against my entire team. Bastiodon is going to be firing off the Stone Edge. The question that I have is, can two Brines potentially grab a KO onto this Bastiodon or force a shield? I go for the Brine, and it looks like the answer is going to be no. It looks like Bastiodon can actually live this next Brine. XL Bastiodon is absolutely disgusting, and they survive the Poison Jabs as well, and leave with a move to hit the Palossand. Venusaur up a Frenzy Plant is an extremely rough thing for this entire team to deal with. I'm going to send in the A9 in the back. It's Galarian Stunfisk, and unfortunately, this game is just more or less a hard counter. This team is designed to bait out one Steel type, but if they have a second, or in this case, if they have a Venusaur with a loaded Frenzy Plant, it's basically just going to be game over. I can try and play this out, but there's not really a whole lot I can do. I can force the CMP tie here and go for the Weather Ball, but the thing is, that's not going to KO, so they can no shield. I can send in the Palossand, but all they have to do is throw a Rock Slide to burn the Switch Clock, and then they can send back in the Venusaur, and Venusaur just has too much of an energy lead at this point in the match. Palossand is not going to be able to win the pacing war, and at this point, they could just farm down as well. So from here, I recognize I'm not going to be winning this game, and I just let the Frenzy Plant get the KO. Moving into the next match, leading Palossand into Lanturn. This matchup is very nice for Palossand if it's Spark. If it's Water Gun, then it's going to be tough. And it is Spark. That's really, really nice for me. With Scorching Sands, you get to Scorching Sands at the same time as Spark Lanturn does get to its Surf. Scorching Sands connects. That does massive damage. We see a save switch into Serperior, and Serperior is going to be answered with Toxapex. Toxapex is one of the only neutral Pokemon in the meta that can actually tank two neutral Frenzy Plants. Not even a Lickitung is comfortably tanking two Frenzy Plants from a Serperior, so pretty nicely done there from the Toxapex. They actually shield the Sludge Wave, which is a bit uncomfortable. I decide to let this go and decide, you know what, I don't really want to get involved in a baiting game or potentially having to shield an Aerial Ace. Instead, I know that I've already gotten a lot of damage onto the Lanturn, so I'm just going to go for energy on the A9. A9, able to get some energy. In comes the Lanturn. I switch into the Palossand, hoping that I caught the Thunderbolt. But it's not to be, it is just the Surf. In the back, it's a Shadow Venusaur, and Palossand on 1 HP makes the Scorching Sands, and this will hurt. That does massive damage to the Venusaur. It gets the debuff, but at this point, a debuff doesn't really matter. They're only getting to one move. I can shield it up. They can send back in the Lanturn, and at this point, I'm in a very comfortable position. I can just go for triple Weather Ball. Going for Dazzling Gleam doesn't really make much sense, or in this case, I can just land a Weather Ball, and the Powder Snow after is going to get the KO. So I just shield up, they go for the Surf, and we take the win. Honestly, I was a bit surprised to see this next Pokemon on the lead, as I lead Palossand into a Vigoroth. I mean, this is a dominant matchup for Palossand, so this is great, but I haven't seen Vigoroth in a while. It's pretty cool to see people using Vigoroth again, especially in a meta where Lickitung is everywhere. It feels like Vigoroth does have some nice play. Vigoroth, of course, the counters and body slams do nothing here, so they're forced to farm all the way up to a bulldoze if they want to do any damage. I can overfarm until just before their next bulldoze. They decide to go for the double resisted body slam. That's not going to KO, but it will get some chip damage. I'm now at the back-to-back Scorching Sands, so I will be able to get the KO and win switch, and also have a move loaded to hit whatever my opponent decides to send in. They send in a Wigglytuff. Oh my goodness, this Wigglytuff is about to have a truly terrible day, as the Wigglytuff is going to get stuck against Toxapex. In comes Toxapex in the back. It's a Medicham, and now we see why they couldn't switch out of that bad lead. They had the Medicham in the back that also gets destroyed by Palossand. I'm just going straight for the Weather Ball here. Weather Ball just gets very valuable chip damage. I can shield once, and after this, my opponent just doesn't really have a win con. They recognize that fact, and they resign the match. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Palossand into Lanturn. This Lanturn is running Spark. Okay, that is quite good for me. I'm going for the Scorching Sands. I don't see a Spark go through, so it looks like it was a CMP tie. Scorching Sands will be shielded up by my opponent, and my opponent actually gets the attack debuff from the Scorching Sands. Surf will connect. I'm farming up. Again, it's going to be a CMP tie here, but my opponent reads me like a book. They saw that I was throwing when they got to the move, so they make a beautiful catch onto Superior. I'm going to rebank the Scorching Sands for later and send in Toxapex. Even though I do have a type advantage here, I am hitting for super effective while I'm taking neutral damage from the Frenzy Plant. Superior is just absolutely disgusting. Oh my goodness. I'm going to be shielding here because this does quite a lot of damage, and then I'm looking to potentially go for a farm down. They can make it to another Frenzy Plant, and this is going to get me incredibly low. I'm still able to hang on with a fraction of HP, but my goodness. Superior puts in a massive amount of work. They're going to send back in the Lanturn. I'm firing off the Sludge Wave. Sludge Wave is going to connect, and I just can't make the brine. I have the Scorching Sands loaded, so I'm just going to send in the Palossand, and they're going to have a tough time sparking down since I am a ground type. They just let that go. In the back, it's Shadow Venusaur. Quick switch into the A9 prevents them from being able to win the ones, and they resign the match. We see a terrible lead in the next match, Palossand into Umbreon. I'm going to save switch into Toxapex. My opponent staying in this matchup, which honestly works out okay for me. Palossand, of course, can't really do much of anything into Umbreon, so Umbreon going up against the Toxapex is a way better outcome for me. I'm going to be firing off the Sludge Wave here into the Umbreon. Umbreon tanks that like it's nothing. Umbreon is extremely bulky, and they're going to consistently be firing off these foul plays. 4 to the first, 3 to the second, so on and so forth. They're firing off yet another foul play. I'm going to let this through, and now I can throw 4 poison jabs and go for a potential KO with a Sludge Wave. Hoping my opponent is going to let this through, and they do. Oh my goodness, but they're able to make the last second charge move there. Foul play gets me low. Poison jab barely does not KO, and I don't win switch. And that's very unfortunate. Opponent has an Azu in the back, so switch advantage wouldn't have really mattered. My opponent is running a team that is very difficult for me to beat. I'm going to fire off a Scorching Sands. Unfortunately, we do not get an attack debuff. They're firing off the charge move, and I'm going to be shielding. With the Powder Snow, Alolan Ninetales in the back, this team is very weak to Azumarill. Azu isn't run a ton anymore, at least that I've seen, but it is really awkward if I do see it. And in the back, they have a Venusaur, and a Venusaur up a shield is just game over for me, unfortunately. I do have the Powder Snow, Alolan Ninetales, but they're going to be able to withstand the Powder Snows and be able to make a bunch of Frenzy Plants. I'm at the back-to-back Weather Balls here, so I can grab both shields, but what my opponent is going to do is play this absolutely perfectly. All they can do here is they know that I'm 5 away, so they can just throw 4 Vine Whips, go for the Frenzy Plant, and now I believe they are going to be 1 off of the Frenzy Plant that will secure them the win versus the Palossand, and they do get there. So very nice energy management there by my opponent. Just a very tough team overall, and they're able to get that win. Hopping into the final match, and Palossand into another Vigoroth. Last time I saw this, they were ABA to Palossand, so they were forced to stay in, and it looks like this trainer is no exception. I'm wondering if it is going to be the same team as last time with the Wigglytuff and, of course, the Medicham in the back. I go for the Scorching Sands before they're able to make the Bulldoze. They're firing off the Bulldoze. Bulldoze is going to connect. And now I can just look to massively overfarm here. Opponent only ends up going for the Body Slam, similar to what the last opponent did. So that's perfectly fine by me. I can tank that. Opponent goes for a Charm Snipe with the Wigglytuff. And my opponent is learning firsthand why you never safe switch a Charmer, as this Wigglytuff is getting absolutely obliterated by Toxapex. Disarming Voice does absolutely nothing. I'm going to farm over 100 energy here because I want to exit this matchup with 100 energy. So now I can put a lot of pressure on whatever my opponent decides to send in. They send in the Vigoroth. I'm going to be firing off the Brine. Brine will get the KO. In the back, it is going to be the Medicham, and the opponent concedes the match. All in all, I did have a ton of fun getting to run Palossand, and it was really enjoyable making the Medichams, Carbinks, and Bastiodons of the world have a really unfortunate day. In the long run, as I mentioned, Palossand is probably more of a pick for fun than for climbing. It does look really interesting for the upcoming Halloween Cup meta, so definitely something to keep in mind. But as far as the Open Great League goes, I would say it's definitely not a pick I'd recommend for climbing. I did go 8-3 in the 11 battles that I did with it. 11 battles is kind of a weird amount. That's just the amount of battles that I had left in the day when I was running it. But yeah, so overall, I did pretty well with it, but personally, there are stronger options if you're looking to climb. This is more of a pick for fun, and if you're running into way too many CARBINK, because this thing obliterates CARBINK. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.